Doing great, and spring pretty much wrapped up. It is in Knoxville with Tennessee football, so heading into the next phase of the offseason to get ready for the 23 season. As you look at Tennessee's program and or team, what stands out to you looking at Tennessee right now getting ready for this upcoming fall?
Well, I think first thing is quarterback. And you have a guy who, especially when you look at this year's draft, that skill set and ability and God-given gifts are maybe more valued than ever, or being placed at more of a premium than they have been ever before. And not to say that Will Levis and Anthony Richardson can't play quarterback, but there are some guys that did a better job quarterbacking their teams that don't have a similar set of skills that aren't going to be drafted anywhere near as high. And you got a guy like that that's sitting there in your lap that's getting ready to take over, that actually has starting experience, that's been around. And the way I look at some of these spring games is there are little fine details that I think you have to pay attention to. You're not going to collectively come away saying, oh, the offense is that much better, or maybe even a position group. You're not going to say, oh, the receivers are that much better, or the O-line is a lot better than I thought they were, or a lot worse. Sometimes you can tell some of that, but not all of it. But I wanted to see Joe kind of run the offense. We know he could do it. Saw in the bowl game, saw it against Vanderbilt, and he's had the other opportunities. But see if he could find a little bit of a change-up. Is he beginning to understand some of the intermediate throws a little bit better, and ball tempo, ball velocity? I saw a little bit of that from him in the game. And then to not have really, I guess, his top four receivers in the game and still be able to go out there and be in command and be able to go at tempo and utilize the pace and still manage that operation at a high rate, I was pretty impressed with that. And then tells me that when he gets some of those other guys around him, they have a chance to be very efficient offensively. So I feel pretty good about that. I don't know exactly what to make of the wide receiver position because we didn't get a lot of them out there. And, you got a young man coming in from Oregon that a lot of people are excited about. We haven't seen a ton of him in this offense, what he's going to be able to do. But, I think some of the things you learned about Tennessee are what you heard about this group off the field during spring practice. And, that would be one of them. I think when you talk about Dante Thornton and you hear people say that he runs in a similar fashion to what Jalen Hyatt did, now all of a sudden my antenna's up. And all of a sudden I look at it and say, all right, well, that's an if. We don't know that, but that's an if that if it goes the right direction for Tennessee could make a massive difference as far as what they are offensively and what they could be as a team this year.
Cole, were you able to take away from the orange and white game anything pertaining to the offensive line?
Not a whole lot, Jason, because you had Ollie Lane's out. You lose another one during the game, and I think because it was, like, one thing about Tennessee's spring game, if you watched it, it was a much faster pace than anybody else. Ole Miss would have been close, but you look at what you watch Texas A&M spring game, and it feels like they were, in quicksand. And it's nothing against them; it's just the way they operated it. They wanted to make sure they huddled up and had everything the way that they wanted. But it's hard to get an idea when you're going that fast with new guys that you haven't seen a ton of exactly what they're going to be. So, listen, I thought the effort was fine. But you just didn't see a lot of guys in conflict situations like you're going to see in a game where I could come away from it and say, okay, I feel a lot better about him, or I feel a lot better about that part of it.
Cole Cubelic, SEC Network here, WJOX in Birmingham. You shared a really, really cool story there on your podcast that people can find on YouTube about Tennessee's pro day and how people wanted to see Joe Milton's arm and why they were unable to see Joe Milton's arm because Josh Heupel said, nah, you have to wait till next year. Can you share that with us?
Yeah, and my understanding, and this wasn't shared with me from Coach Heupel, but the way that I understand this was, and as you guys now know, the underclassmen can throw at pro days. Like I think Bryce Young threw last year at Alabama's pro day. So it gives you a little bit of a head start for some of those scouts to see up close and what you're going to be capable of doing. Whereas, 2 years ago, that was against the rules. That wasn't able to happen. Sometimes, we've seen – I remember, like, Ben Leard went back and threw at the Auburn Pro Day, like, 8 years after we were gone. You see some of these guys come back and throw because there's nobody to help the receivers out, and obviously Hendon Hooker wasn't going to be 100% and be able to go do it. So apparently – Coach Heupel was getting a lot of different calls about Joe and him potentially throwing. And then more coaches, more personnel, more interest, more people coming when they found out he was going to throw. And it started getting a little out of control. And I thought this was just, we don't get to see a lot of the human beings that these coaches are very often. We don't get to see that side of them. We don't get to see decisions that affect guys in different ways and the human side of who they are. And the reason I wanted to share it and thought it was worth sharing was because I think it shows us a little bit of that about Josh Heupel. And apparently once the hype and the momentum got going, he actually shut Joe down at the pro day and said, listen, this is getting to a point that it's going to take away from the other guys. And this is those guys' opportunity to go make a career out of football and to go play professionally and for some of them to maybe live out their dreams. And I don't want to hurt that. I don't want the attention to be taken away from somebody that might have that opportunity. It was nothing against Joe. Not that he didn't want him to, didn't think he could, didn't think he would go out there and impress, but he'll have his chance next year. And then obviously with what he's going to be able to put on film this year. But I just thought it was really cool to hear a head coach in this that doesn't really have to go out of his way to help guys, especially, not obviously Jalen Hyatt's going to go in the first round. You got an offensive tackle that's going to come off the board in the first round. But I think he understands there's some fringe guys there as well that are going to be working out that probably need every eyeball on them that they can get just to get every chance. And for him to sit back and say, you know what, we're not going to let him throw because we want the attention on the guys that are coming out now, and we felt like that was going to be a bit of a distraction. I think it just kind of shows the human side of Josh Heupel and how much he cares about his guys, how much he wants to see them do well, and how much he's willing to help them in different instances when he can be able to go on and continue playing football after they're done at Tennessee. I just thought it was an amazing story, and we don't get to hear a lot of things like that about these coaches because they're guarded for good reason, and a lot of those things just don't really come out. They stay internal, and I thought it was a pretty special story about the person that Josh Heupel really is.
Yeah, it's a cool note from Tennessee's Pro Day from Cole Cubelic with us right now here on Josh and Swain. And you mentioned that guy that's expected to be in the first round from Tennessee's offensive line, Darnell Wright. Tennessee does have John Campbell, a transfer who's come in from Miami, who has he's been put in on the left side of the offensive line. What do you think, though, about having to replace Darnell there at right tackle, the emphasis on that position from what he was able to do last year, and how Tennessee tries to replace him this upcoming fall?
I think it's going to be tough just because, a guy that has that kind of ability and has that size and can change directions the way that he could, it's not going to be easy to find. I think you have a couple of guys, like you mentioned, John Campbell's coming in. You got a transfer from Texas coming in that I think can help, but I don't think he's going to be able to help you at guard. And Andres Carrick, I don't think he's going to help you at tackle. I think he's more of a guard. But I do think from an attitude perspective, he can bring a little bit extra, kind of like what we talked about with Javonte Spraggins a lot of the times, and he can add some more of that to that Tennessee offensive line. So the good news is it is an offense that, if it's necessary, can protect that group and can protect the perimeter of that group a little bit more at times, whether you offer some quarterback run. And I think they'll be able to draw up more quarterback run in between the tackles this year than they have because of Joe's frame and what he's able to do. And then with some of the quick throws on the perimeter, I think that's going to be more of an emphasis. You saw a little bit in that spring game. I think that they, other than that just being an outlet for how they want to operate, I think they want to put an emphasis on some of the stuff out wide to force people to defend it in even a different way. I think they can create more yards that way than maybe they did a year ago. So it's hard to really tell exactly right now who's going to be able to fit in, who could potentially be dominant or be really good, just because it's a small sample size of what we got in that game. And like I said, it was a very controlled atmosphere in that game with how they were operating at such a fast pace. Didn't really get a chance to see those guys settle in too much.
Cole, we need you to use your SEC Network juice and get Heupel in Tennessee to get a video of Joe Milton throwing the ball 70, 80, 90 yards. We'll be hearing all these different lengths. I need you to use your juice, man. We need to see the video. We're hearing 90 yards. That's insane.
Well, listen,
man.
And you guys, you heard me on the podcast. It's on YouTube. It's on Apple Podcast, Spotify. Cube Show is how you can search it. At Cube Show 61, I think, is the actual handle on YouTube. I'm not really up on my YouTube stuff yet. We're trying, though. We're getting there. We got a very small subscriber base. We're trying to just scratch and claw here. But when somebody who covered that game tells me that the number 90 was thrown out as a possibility, I had to stop that individual and say, okay, there's no guesswork at that point. If we start talking about 90-something, like, we need exact specifications. I need to know that was 91.5 or that was 94. Like, you don't play around with that anymore. I think in the 70s you can. You're like, 74, 77, and people are going to be like, oh yeah, man, that's crazy. Like, wow, you can really sling it. You put a 9 at the front of that number, like, now we need to be very detailed with how we describe that, because we have gone to a completely different galaxy of being able to throw the football, and that's not something that I think we need to be playing around with. If that can happen, I'm with you, Swain. I want to see video of it. We talk about a recruiting tool. Like, put that thing out there. How viral would that go? I mean, even if it's 80 or 85, like, just put it out there, mark it down, do like a throwback video of the old quarterback challenge back in the day where Testaverde and Kozar and Marino and those guys used to sling it around, and see what we can do. Because if we can get close to that, wait for a really windy day and then get out there, like, get a little wind behind it. Nobody in the video is going to know. And get that thing up at like 90 yards. Get that on Twitter and Instagram. We're going viral. That's going to be great for the program.
I agree. Remember that Michael Vick commercial where he, like, throws it out of the stadium? Do the same thing.
But for real
there
this
you
time.
go.
But for real, exactly.
Yeah, Cole, get a source within the athletic department to send it to you. Put it up on the Cube Show footage. That'll get the subscriber base to take off, so people can subscribe to the Cube Show. Yeah, you didn't have enough on your plate with XFL, college football, radio show every day, so you have the Cube Show podcast. Tell people what's going on there if they want to listen to it.
We're just trying to bring college football content on Sundays, and it started back during the season. I had wanted to do it with Jordan and Tom for a long time. Kind of late Saturday night. We did it for a year and a half, I think, on Periscope, and it just kind of never really did anything. And I mean, it was more myself. Like, Andy Staples has a great late Saturday night podcast. I'll never tell people that he doesn't. I listen to it on the plane every Sunday morning when I travel home from games. The Andy Staples Show. Josh Pate does a great podcast late Sunday nights, but there's a giant gap in between where you're just sitting there, going back and looking over stuff either from before the weekend or like actual recaps of games, and nothing really dials in. So I said, I'm going to go watch all the film as fast as I can, late Saturday night, Sunday morning on my way home. And I'm just going to break down the games, what I see, X's and O's from the tape, and then we'll regurgitate that on Sunday, and we'll let it go. Well, we got to keep it going through the off season, so we're doing spring previews of individual teams. We're doing, obviously, recaps of spring games, which is what we just did this last week. Tennessee spring, the full spring preview still to come. We'll do that here in a couple of weeks. But we'll obviously recap Alabama, LSU this weekend. Didn't get to South Carolina last weekend. That one will be coming up. So it's just every Sunday we're gonna come up with different things throughout the off season. Transfer portal will keep us busy. I try to go watch the kids that have come in that played somewhere else, give fans an idea of what they were. Like, you get Ronaldo Fairweather at Auburn. He's a tight end and played at FIU. Not many Auburn fans have ever seen him play in a game. So I go pull his film, I watch him, I tell you what he's going to try to be, and I try to let people know, hey, this is the kid that's coming in, this is what he looks like, and we're going to get a whole new wave here in the spring. So we'll try to do that over the next few weeks as well. But basically, it's just college football content on Sunday when I feel like we have almost none. And you guys know this fan base, of SEC and SEC schools. Like, we want stuff every day.
That's right.
So if you're driving home from work or church, or you're traveling back home, or you're cutting the grass on a Sunday afternoon, like, we want to give you content to be able to regurgitate and try not to waste a bunch of time. Like, it's not about how important we are or how many people tune in, because not very many do. But just get right into ball and try to talk college football, focusing on the SEC every Sunday. So Cube Show, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. I think we're up to like 50 subscribers. It's a really big deal, and we're just scratching and clawing here.
You're so humble, Cole.
Yeah.
You're a pretty big deal. You're a pretty big deal, Cole. We're going to.
I'm not on the level of a lot of other people that talk about their subscribers, so I got a ways to go.
I can promise you this, Cole. You've added 2.
That's
Jason
right.
Swain and Josh Ward.
Yeah, we are on the list. Cole. We had a message into the text box from Chris asking, has Cole recovered from all the autographs he signed at Neyland Stadium last year from the Tennessee game? So The fans
Thankfully,
remember.
we didn't have to have carpal tunnel surgery in the offseason for that when we were able to just go to physical therapy and get that taken care of. But, yes, I will sign every crock that is put in front of my face every time I'm in Neyland. Never deny that.
Let's go.
Yeah, Cole has a good shoe game as well. So go subscribe. The Cube Show covering the SEC as well as anybody out there. Cole, thanks for the time today. Always appreciate it and look forward to talking to you again soon.
I appreciate you guys having me. Let's do it again. We'll catch up some more during this offseason when we all need a little extra content.
Yes.
Right.